Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are making a single serving apple pie. All right, if you're new here, hi, I'm Claire. Welcome, come on in, make yourself comfortable. I do a lot of single servings over here on this channel, so if you like that type of content, be sure to hit subscribe. Now, a few weeks ago, I posted my recipe for a single chocolate chip cookie. And a lot of you really liked that recipe, and I got some comments about giving a single serving pie a try. And I'm happy to say I have perfected it. Today I am making an apple pie because that's my personal preference, but you don't have to use apples. You could swap it for a different fruit or a different flavor. You guys could really have fun with this. The proportions for the single pie crust will stay the same. You could definitely get creative with your own preferences. So if apples aren't your vibe, don't worry. Use something different, but I love an apple pie. So today's style of pie is going to be a hand pie. In my testing, I found that this was the most delicious way to make a single pie. However, I also experimented a bit with a sort of free-formed galette style pie as well. Insert photo. So just keep in the back of your mind, even though the one I'm gonna make for you today is a hand pie, you can make a galette. It's possible. And with that, let's get right into the recipe for a single serving apple pie. All right, for our crust, we only need 4 ingredients. The first is butter. I choose salted because that is my personal preference. No matter what I'm baking, you will never find unsalted butter in my home. I also have some ice water. We're only gonna need a little bit. We have flour and sugar, and because we're making just one tiny pie crust, we're gonna need very small amounts of each of these things. All right, we're gonna start with our butter, and we're going to need 2 tablespoons. And this is cold butter. When you're making a pie crust, you want everything to stay cold. That's what's gonna give you that flaky, crispy crust. You do not want like a melted butter situation. You could use a food processor to cut in your flour and butter, or if you have one of those little tools. Personally, because this is such a small amount, I do not want to dirty any more dishes than I have to. So I'm just gonna chop it up first with this knife. Now we're gonna come in with our flour, and we are going to add 4 tablespoons of flour. Next, I'm going to add some sugar. I'm just gonna do 1 teaspoon of sugar. I tested this without the sugar, and I found that it just needed a little bit more sweetness in that crust, and I found it to be way more delicious with that teaspoon. However, if you're trying to cut down on sugar, you don't have to include it. It will still be nice and flaky and crispy without it. Now I'm going to cut in the butter with my hands. I find that this is just the easiest way. It's such a small amount. It just takes a second, and basically you're taking your chunk of butter, you're coating it in flour, and you're smooshing it between your fingers until it like crumbles. And we basically want this to be like a crumbly, sort of sandy mixture. You don't want any chunks larger than the size of a pea. And it's also important that if it starts melting, pop it in your refrigerator. You do not want this butter to melt. You want it to be in tiny little floury, pebbly chunks. All right, this looks perfect. Now we're going to add our water. You're gonna need almost a tablespoon, but really what you wanna do is just add a little bit at a time until this just comes together as a dough. You don't wanna knead it, you don't wanna break up that butter. It's sort of a dry dough. This isn't gonna be like bread dough at all. Just enough for it to come together. Might need just a little bit more. I'm just gonna dip my fingers in. Perfect. All right, now I'm going to just squeeze it into a ball and then flatten it. And now it's time to give it a little chill. Ideally, you're gonna wanna chill it for like 20 minutes in the fridge, but I am actually just gonna pop this in the freezer while I preheat my oven and while I get my filling together, and I think probably 10 minutes will be just fine in the freezer. All right, while our crust is chilling in the freezer, I'm gonna go ahead and preheat my oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Now it's time to assemble our filling, and you're gonna start with an apple. This is a Michigan Honey Crisp, a great choice. However, I actually just chose it because it was the cheapest apple, and that's the vibe. So choose whatever apple you like, but keep in mind the tartar the apple, you might want to add a little bit more sugar depending on what your sort of personal preference is. These are quite sweet, which I love, and you're just gonna need actually half of one apple. So make sure, keep in your mind, save the other half for another thing before you make this. We don't want to waste anything. So if you need a half an apple for your, I don't know, oatmeal tomorrow, keep that in the back of your mind. We're gonna need half of one. We're also gonna be using some cinnamon. We're also gonna be throwing in a little bit of white sugar, as well as half a tablespoon, just a little tiny bit of butter. I did it without butter and it still worked. It just was a little bit drier on the inside, and I thought that that little tiny bit of butter really gave it that texture that was fabulous. So I'm not gonna skip it, but again, you could if you had to. I'm gonna go ahead and peel this apple real quick. I'm gonna go ahead and chop it. And I know my dog heard this. Banjo. My dogs love an apple core. My apple slicer cuts them into 8 slices. So I'm using 4. And I'm just eating the other ones right now. Little appetizer. Now I'm just gonna chop these up. In no particular way. Just in little chunks. I'm also going to go microwave this teeny tiny bit of butter. All right, we're gonna add our little bit of butter. As far as cinnamon goes, we're going to do half a teaspoon. And I'm also going to just do half a teaspoon of sugar. I found that with my Honey Crisp apples, half a teaspoon was sweet enough for me. However, if you have a really big sweet tooth and you want this to be very sweet, you could add more sugar. Give this a nice little mix. That was just about the perfect amount of time because our pastry, it's nice and firm, but not frozen, and we're ready to roll it out. I'm gonna go ahead and just lightly flour my surface and my hands. And a little bit on the top as well. And then we're just gonna roll it into a circle, and this does not need to be perfect. We are making a rustic little hand pie here. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. Just circle-ish. And it's okay if you get this fraying around the ends. It's totally fine. We're gonna tuck all of it in on itself and it will look totally cute when we're done, don't worry. You're gonna wanna get it pretty thin. You don't want it to get like thick and gummy when we cook it. I'm gonna say about 6 inches. Then we are going to add our filling. And now we're going to just flip it over and seal it up. If it starts cracking, put your hand over it for just a second. The warmth from your hands will kind of help smush everything together. And then, because I'm just like an old school queen, I'm just using a fork to seal up my edges. If you are a fancy pie baker and you want to make some darling little fold, go for it. I'm just gonna use a fork. There we go. She's darling. I'm gonna go ahead and put it on this little, it's a Pampered Chef stone actually. I love baking with stoneware and I love this little tiny one. It's like the perfect size. It's a little stuck. I'm gonna use my bench scraper to peel it up. You could just use a spatula. All right, this next part is totally optional, and that is an egg wash. The egg wash isn't going to add any particular flavor. It's just going to give us like a nicer, more brown finish, and it will just like look nicer and like a slightly crispier top. But because you would have to use a whole egg for this, I'm telling you it's optional because I wouldn't want you to waste an egg. So if you are already planning on eating an egg later today, maybe a scrambled egg for something else, maybe you could scramble it up, cook it, give it to your dog. If you have a pet or something, you can do that. Personally, I hate wasting a whole egg on an egg wash for something this small. But if you know me, if you follow me, I raise quail, and we do have a few eggs right now from the quail, and that is going to be the perfect size for my egg wash so I don't have to waste anything. But of course, if you want to use an egg, use an egg. If you don't want to waste an egg on an egg wash, then don't do it. It will still taste delicious. I just absolutely love my little quail eggs. They come in such handy. Perfect for an egg wash, but also just good for anything you'd use eggs for. It's a vibe. And the last thing we're gonna do before we put it in the oven is just to make a few slits in the top for the steam to escape. And she is ready for the oven. Now I'm going to throw it in my oven. It's gonna take about 18 to 22 minutes. Just keep an eye on it. And if your little edge here is quite thin, be careful that it doesn't burn. Pull it before it gets burnt. But I tried to keep mine the same sort of thickness as I did the top so that that wouldn't happen. But yeah, 18 to 20 minutes for your oven. For mine, 20 exactly did it, so I gave you a little buffer there. Oh, she is beautiful. I cannot wait to eat this. Oh my goodness. She is just perfectly toasty, okay? We've got a little bit of our apples just peeking through here. It smells like a bakery in here, I'm not gonna lie, but I am gonna wait a little while, let it cool down a bit before I open up the inside and show you how incredible this little baby pie is. All right, it is still a little bit warm because a warm apple pie is the best apple pie. I do wish I had some ice cream to enjoy this with, but I don't. It would be a great addition. But please, look at this tasty pie. The bottom, nice and crisp. Look in there. The apples are nice and soft. You guys, this is such a delicious little pie, and it did not take hardly any time or effort to make. Obviously, time for the taste test. So good. It is just everything you want in a little homemade dessert, you know? And there you go, a single serving of apple pie. No need to make a whole big one. If you're just wanting a little something sweet, you could do this instead. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought of our hand pie. What kind of pie would you make? Would you stick with apple? I have a peach tree, and I am hoping this year I finally get some peaches out of it. So maybe later in the summer, I will make a single serving peach pie because that would be great. Of course, come on back for more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!